Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening to the community, students, and staff. We are reconvening our meeting for March the 10th in open session now. As you can tell, there will be only one meeting in March, so we're going to be talking about both a workshop and a business meeting as our agenda tonight. In the absence of Ms. Miller, Mr. Stevens will be acting as Secretary Pro Tem. In the absence of Dr. Scarpino, and I will be acting in Mrs. Miller's absence. And Mr. Stevens, would you please call the roll?
Ferrantino,
Present.
Lamarca,
Present.
McNicholas, Miller, Scarpino, Stevens present, Zettler.
Present.
4, you have a quorum.
Excellent. Well, we'd like to welcome the staff and students of Gulfview Elementary. Parents, feel free to move around the room and take some pictures of these fantastic students that are looking terrific tonight. Excellent.
Good evening, Superintendent Hyde and board members. I'm happy to be here tonight to share with you an exciting addition to our PBIS program at Gulfview Elementary School, our color teams. All students in our school are placed onto a color team. The purpose of our team system is to provide a sense of belonging to a group or a team while focusing on teaching and reinforcing positive behavior and building relationships. Color teams meet monthly to build an understanding of good character traits and set the stage for the upcoming monthly core value. During team meetings, student ambassadors present data to each color team, and all students participate in a sharing circle and in activities that reinforce the monthly core value using their literacy and oracy skills. With us here tonight, I'm proud to present to you our student ambassadors. These ambassadors were selected for their leadership skills and ability to demonstrate the core values with their peers on a consistent basis. Student ambassadors embody the Gator Way in their daily actions. What is the Gator Way?
Be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. Ser respetuoso, ser responsable, ser cuidadoso.
As some of our ambassadors are ready to take their leadership skills to the middle school level next year, the current team of ambassadors will be working to interview and help train new ambassadors for the next school year. We have had the pleasure of watching these students develop new skills and competencies as leaders. From starring in school-wide videos to welcoming new students at Gulfview, they truly deserve a special recognition tonight. Please join me in congratulating Gulfview's 2019-2020 Color Team Ambassadors. If you guys could stand and join us in the pledge. Turn around. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Comfortable, come on up and we can share some fist bumps. Hey, nice looking tie. Thanks for being here. Guys, take care. Great job, guys. I like that jacket. Very nice. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to request a motion and second to approve tonight's agenda.
So, second.
Mr. Stevens, please call the roll.
Zettler,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Lamarca,
Aye.
Ferrantino,
Aye.
motion approved 4-0.
Mr. Hyde, we have some exciting recognition tonight.
We do. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, members of the community and staff. At this time, I'd like to bring Carrie Curry up, who will introduce our district spelling bee champions. How are you?
Superintendent Hyde, President Miller, members of the school board, family, and friends. On Thursday, February 6, 90 middle schoolers descended on Carpentersville Middle School to prove that they do not need spell check for the annual middle school district spelling bee. They competed by grade levels and then had a lunch of pizza before returning to their respective schools to complete their day. The winners are as follows. In 6th grade tonight, we have our first place winner, Ms. Elise Field from Westfield Community School. Raise your hand. In 7th grade, we have our second place winner, Zachary Green from Hampshire Middle School. And our first place winner for 8th grade, Christiana Busog from Hampshire Middle School. We are also fortunate enough to have 5 students who have represented us at the Kane County Regional Spelling Bee, which is a precursor for the National Scripps Spelling Bee. Representing Carpentersville Middle School is Jalen Ola. And representing Westfield, Elise Field. I'd like to thank the following 4 women who are the building coordinators in their respective buildings and help to ensure the district spelling bee is a wonderful day for the students. Jamie Vodvarka, Lori Sobrowski, Amanda Hurley, and Heather Piccolotti. A huge thank you to the middle school administrators Tom Resnock, Jeff Herb, Dr. Martina Smith, and Jason Lentz, who come out and help with the judging panel that day. I know the kids enjoy having them there, and they look like they were having fun as well. Thank you to Lindsay Jonas for coming out and helping with the judging. Fun fact about Lindsay, she was the winner of her school's spelling bee in 4th grade. Thank you also to Jackie Johnson and her assistant Diane Stearns. They do a lot of the behind the scenes work to ensure that items are ordered and things are ready for the students. It was a lot of fun working with these 2 women, and I look forward to it again next year. Watch your calendars for next year's bee and come on out and join us for a fun day. We may even allow you to spell a word or 2, Mr. Hyde. Thank you. All right. Walk that way.
Are you serious?
No. I can't even say that word. How are you? Good. Oh, good to see you. Next year, right? All right. I'm holding you to that.
They can spell anti-this establishmentarianism.
At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Sheila Karate-Kagan, who will talk to us about our 2020 Illinois High School Theater Festival participants.
Good evening, Mr. Hyde and members of the Board of Education. I am very proud to present our 2020 Illinois High School Theater Festival and Illinois Music Educators Association All-State Musician recipients here with this evening. I'm going to begin by presenting our All-State Theater Tech Crew student, Logan Newshafer. Logan was selected through an application process where he had to include his resume of what he's done in theater at Dundee Crown High School and in other places as well, and was selected among many, many students to participate in the All-State Show, which was staged at the end of the All-State Theater Festival this year, in this past January. I'd also like to recognize our All-State musicians from all 3 high schools. And we're going to start with Dundee Crown High School. They're already up here as well. And I'm going to introduce Miss Melissa Aukus and Miss Christina Cummins. to talk a little bit more about what ILMEA is and recognize our students.
Being named an Illinois Music Educators Association All-State Musician is one of the most prestigious honors bestowed upon high school musicians. ILMEA is comprised of 9 geographic districts. District 300 is in District number 9, which is widely regarded as one of the most competitive districts in our state. In order to qualify for All-State, these students had to audition among the top of their given instrument or voice type at District 9 auditions, which featured over 2,000 total auditions. These students spent countless hours preparing for auditions, where they were able to perform at their highest level under immense pressure. These students displayed immense preparation and the ability to come through in the clutch. To send one student to All-State is an accomplishment for any school district, and between the 3 D300 schools, we were able to send 13 students to All-State this year.
The students from Dundee Crown, we have John Wojciechschlager in the jazz combo for guitar. We have Josh Sanchez in the Honors All-State Chorus. We have Nathan Kohlert in the All-State Chorus, and Eric Baena on bassoon in the All-State Honors All-State Orchestra. Band. That's a lie. Band.
And I'm going to have Miss Barb Valley come up to introduce our Jacobs High School All-State musicians.
Okay, I'll do it. I'd love to do it. I love recognizing our wonderful fine arts program at Jacobs High School. We have 4 of our 5 All-State participants with us tonight. We have Alyssa Kufal from the All-State Choir. We have Tommy Devona from the Honors All-State Choir. We have Jesse, and Jesse, I'm going to butcher it. Aronia. Okay, I knew a couple tries I might get it right. Honors All-State Vocal Jazz. And Christoph Solis with our Honors All-State Orchestra. And we love the fact that he's a multifaceted young man. So congratulations to all 4 of you.
Well done. You were great. Good job. Congratulations.
Great job.
And members of the Board of Education, I have to tell you that it is 2 days from opening night for the Hampshire High School Musical, and all of our Hampshire High School All-State musicians are also in the musical in some capacity and did not want to miss tonight's practice, as you can imagine. So unfortunately, they're not here this evening. We did have 4 students selected as All-State musicians from Hampshire High School as well, and we are extremely proud of all of them. Additionally, I would like to talk a little bit about an additional honor that I might choke up a little bit on this one. We're going to pull it up for you right now. So in addition to our All-State musicians, and every year D300 is proud to send a representative group, which again is extremely competitive, as is the All-State Theater Festival. Being selected for the crew or any part in that show is a huge accomplishment for any student. Being selected as an All-State musician is a huge accomplishment. But in addition to those individuals, you can also send in an audition to bring an ensemble. Only a handful of ensembles are selected from each of our from schools all over Illinois of each type of ensemble. So there'll be a handful of choirs, a handful of jazz combos, a handful of concert bands and wind ensembles and orchestras. So having one school selected to participate is an incredible accomplishment. District 300 had all 3.
Wow. Well done. Yeah.
So I have some pictures. We have so many kids that it might not have There may not have been enough room here at the board. So I'll start with Dundee Crown. Up there, you'll see their program. Just before that, there were some pictures. Our Dundee Crown High School Jazz Ensemble, under the direction of Will Brocker and Melissa Aukus, performed amazingly at IMEC. In fact, they had the doors open because it was really crowded, and other participants going by heard how good they were and came in until there was no room left, which was just such an incredible experience for all of our students. After that, we have our Hampshire High School Varsity Treble Choir, which is such a large group to bring down. They performed at the Scottish Rite Cathedral. This is all in Peoria, Illinois, by the way, at the Peoria Civic Center. So just a few blocks away from the Civic Center, there is this beautiful, amazing cathedral where our students were fortunate enough to perform. They were accompanied by Miss Lisa Betcher, a retired D300 music teacher, under the direction of Mr. Christopher Cherry, who again is a little bit busy with his musical this evening, as you can imagine. They sang so beautifully. Like I said, I'm going to get a little choked up because I was just so impressed by all of our students this year, and it was such an amazing experience for all of our students. And then last but certainly not least, in fact, they're in alphabetical order, just so you know I'm not picking favorites, is the Jacobs High School Golden Heirs, which is a chamber choir consisting of actually a couple students who were just here earlier today, under the direction of Jennifer Wixer Parker, who's unfortunately a little bit under the weather today, and accompanied by Duncan Parker. Yes, that is her husband. And they performed several pieces, all based on the theme of flying and taking wing. And they also performed at the Scottish Rite Cathedral, and it was just an incredible performance. It was packed, and it was just amazing to hear our students performing, and having so many other school districts get the opportunity to hear our D300 students and how well we're doing here. So we're very proud of all of them.
Well done. Well, that's terrific. So now the board members will share some more good news. During last month's regional Teach CT conference, Dundee Crown High School's automotive technology teacher, Mr. Dan Lentino, earned the Northern Kane Region 110's Career and Technical Education Distinguished Teacher of the Year Award. Dan has made a tremendous impact at Dundee Crown High School. He has the highest retention rate of students entering the Automotive Technology 1 foundational course and continuing on to complete Automotive Technology 2. Dan requested pink tools last year to ensure female students felt welcome and celebrated in the course. He started an autos club that meets weekly after school. He was also the driving force behind District 300's actions to offer our automotive students the ASE industry certification. He ensures students understand the career field and engage with industry experts through multiple field trips. Lastly, each day Dan brings a dynamic passion for content and builds positive relationships with students. Congratulations, Mr. Lentino.
On Tuesday, February 25th, District 300 held its inaugural Chopped competition at Jacobs High School. During this competition, a team from each high school worked with mystery ingredients while participating in 2 rounds. Round 1 was appetizers, round 2 was desserts. Aramark provided students with a bountiful and beautiful pantry of fresh ingredients to create their plate. Feedback was provided by a panel of industry experts following each round. For the first round, the mystery ingredients included 1 pound of ground turkey and 1 box of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Students used the ingredients to create ground turkey and pasta stuffed bell peppers, ground turkey meatballs, and turkey sliders. For the second round, the mystery ingredient was 1 can of refrigerated biscuits and 2 kiwis. Students used these ingredients to make the empanadas filled with cream cheese and strawberry and kiwi sauce, strawberry and kiwi tartlet topped with marshmallow and strawberry cream, and chocolate, strawberry, and kiwi shortcake. That makes you hungry, doesn't it? District 300 would like to congratulate the 2020 Chopped competition winners, Kaya Hayes and Amani Dunn from Jacobs High School.
District 300 hosts successful science fair. Last month, student scientists gathered at Jacobs High School to compete in District 300's 63rd annual science fair. The District 300 science fair set the stage for aspiring scientists to compete, collaborate, and celebrate their passion with their mentors and peers. During the fair, over 800 students presented 500 projects. The projects included a large variety of topics, including waves, magnetic levitation, short-term memory and age, material designs, hand sanitizer explorations, well, there you go, and more. Each project was evaluated by a pair of judges, which included D300 teachers, administrators, and enthusiastic community volunteers. Over 100 projects qualified to move on to the regional IJAS Science Fair at Northern Illinois University. These projects qualify due to the quality of the science, communication of the ideas, caliber of the written project, and clarity of the presentation board. Congratulations to all of our science fair participants.
The 2020 United States Census should begin arriving in mailboxes across the country beginning March 12th. Families will be able to respond to the census online, by phone, or through the mail. District 300 would like to inform families about the significance of completing the census. Census counts impact funding for public schools, Medicaid, supplemental nutrition programs, and the Head Start program. District 300 will send out census messaging to families this spring, including RCS messages, website postings, and social media posts.
District 300 recently held a series of strategic plan town hall meetings with the Northern Kane Chamber of Commerce and the Algonquin Lake in the Hills Chamber of Commerce. One of the main objectives of the meeting was to ask business owners how District 300 can create a stronger relationship with local businesses. The meetings were well attended and included business owners from the financial industry, healthcare providers, electricians, HVAC specialists, hair salons, marketing firms, retail store owners, and more. Chamber members provided great insights that will prove valuable in the district's strategic planning process. District 300 would like to thank members of the Northern Kane and Algonquin Lake in the Hills Chamber for their attendance. District 300 is working to schedule a meeting with our Hampshire Chamber of Commerce in the coming weeks.
Excellent. Okay, there are two important agenda items on the superintendent's report. Mr. Hyde.
Can we skip to the next slide, please? So at this time, I'd like to bring Lindsay Jonas and Amy Engel, to the podium if I don't see her present, so I didn't know if she'd be here, talking about our curriculum resource selection for science.
Good evening, Board of Education and Mr. Hyde. I'm back. We are doing great work in the area of curriculum resources, and so I'm excited to bring to you some science elective course materials. These courses and textbook materials will support the modernization of our high school science elective courses. As always, teams are comprised of teachers, administrators, division heads, our director of science, in order to be part of that review process. And all of the recommendations that I am asking to put on public display have been unanimous by all parties involved. So environmental science was one of the course electives that we took a look at. And the course overview for environmental science is really about current events and the impact of the environment. And we are making the recommendation of Environmental Science, Sustaining Your World by National Geographic, Cengage Learning. These materials provide great accessibility to teachers and students in a digital format. They align to our current curriculum and Illinois learning standards. One of the exciting parts of this particular resource was National Geographic explorer information, so current live scientists who get to bring new updated material to all of the students so that they can see in the field what that would look like as an environmental scientist. And then, of course, supplemental resources to extend learning, such as case studies and STEM activities. The other course that we took a look at was AP Biology, and we are making the recommendation of Biology in Focus by Savvis. So biology, the big book that probably many of us took a look at when we were in college or in AP Biology, is that same book that has been around forever. And Biology in Focus streamlines some of that concept to make it more accessible for students. It still currently aligns to curriculum and standards, especially by the College Board. It's a revised version of our current textbook, and they have great supportive features that are new, like adaptive assessment, videos, explanations of research, and hands-on labs. So these materials will be available for the next 30 days for public review up in Conference Room F upstairs, and I will be back again in April to request a formal approval. Any questions?
I wish you get a little more excited about it.
She's always like that.
I've never seen somebody get so excited about adopting textbooks. Just a little bit of clarification. So the board had previously approved the science textbook adoptions for our other school levels. But once we get to high school, courses become so specific in nature to their subject and or title. That's why it takes additional time. So that's I wanted to explain why these standalone science classes were not incorporated into the original science adoption timeline, because we handle these courses, especially AP courses and others, very differently. Career Tech Ed and others are handled in a very similar format because, again, they're limited to 1 or 2 teachers per building and just a handful of classes, but we recognize the need for them to have current relevant resources that they can utilize in their classrooms. So I just wanted to make sure I explained why it seems like, if anybody had a question, why it seems like it's being adopted outside of a traditional adoption cycle. So that being said, I have the absolute pleasure to provide the board and community with a coronavirus update. All jokes aside, it's a serious matter. Many people have noticed in the media. Today alone, just as an entry to this, as of yesterday, Illinois had 7 confirmed cases across the state. As of this afternoon at 1:30 with the governor's media release, there are 19 confirmed cases, with 1 confirmed case now in Kane County, which is related to a 60-year-old female. And then the second case is a McHenry County case related to a teen, but we have not been informed. That is not, right now, we're not been informed as to what school district or even if that student or that person is a student at this time. So just it's updating daily. Parents will receive another update on coronavirus. They've already received an FAQ, much of which we will cover here again this evening. First 3 slides are pretty straightforward. The first slide is symptoms. It is important for us to continue to clarify the symptomology for coronavirus is very similar to that of influenza, and we are still in the midst of the influenza season. Average daily absenteeism for a school building will range anywhere from 3.4 to 4.0% on any given day. That's typically our daily average. During influenza season, it's not uncommon to see anywhere from 5 to 8% on a regular basis. And again, it depends on the strain, how it impacts the community, whether or not the flu shot was appropriate. But the symptoms in particular are exactly that we see with the influenza, flu-like symptoms. The difference here is that it does pose a greater risk for upper and lower respiratory infections simply because of the way the protein coat functions and how it attaches and what types of tissues it will attach to. And that's also why you tend to see more of a predominant issue amongst the elderly who may already be immunocompromised and or have existing respiratory issues. Transmission, same thing as the flu, coughing, sneezing. It is very rare for it to happen just by contact with someone or being in proximity to someone. A lot of this has to do with if you do come into contact with someone who is a carrier or who has symptoms, if you don't wash your hands but then you touch your face, in particular your eyes, your nose, your mouth, it is likely to spread. That's the greatest likelihood of transmission. This is all taken from the Illinois Department of Public Health and CDC websites. So I did include that last piece, which is it's rarely transmitted through fecal contamination, but if you think about it, if a parent is still diapering an infant, it is possible for that contamination to occur. With surfaces, it is important, let me just touch on a few things. When it comes to the longevity of the coronavirus on a solid surface or on what we call a high-touch area, doorknobs, countertops, desks, restrooms, stalls, those kinds of things, it does vary. It varies greatly dependent on the amount of humidity. It also varies on temperature. We do treat all of our buildings, and we'll talk about that here in a moment, but it can vary as far as how long it can persist on a surface without basically dying. Prevention, same things we continue to reiterate in our buildings with our students. We've updated posters on all of our restrooms to remind students about vigorously hand washing, washing for approximately 20 seconds, washing their hands together, washing the backs of their hands, interlacing their fingers. Very similar to what you see and you kind of laugh about when you watch one of those surgeons going into surgery, how they scrub down and they put on their gloves and the whole thing. But that is the process we should be following. Frequent hand washing and covering our coughs either into your elbow or into a handkerchief are the best ways to also help prevent the spread as well. If you're sick, stay at home. You know, we hear every year parents have concerns about our policies for exclusion. Our exclusion policies never change. If a student has a fever or has not been fever-free for 24 hours, they are to stay at home. And so that's part of the problem is far too often students may initially be symptom-free or their fever drops and they're running a low-grade fever, so we go ahead and we let them go back to class. And the reality of it is they then become patient zero that transfers this to other students. That's typically what we see during influenza season. Important to note, there are currently no vaccines to protect against the coronavirus, and the treatment methodology, the treatment plan is very similar again to the flu, and again dependent on how the patient or the extent to which the patient has succumbed to some of the adverse effects of these symptoms. Local impact, this graph had been updated yesterday. Again, it does not reflect the total count. It was updated again today after the governor's press conference. It was not available prior to my afternoon meetings. The total count, again, has gone from an initial count of just 4 in the state of Illinois. Yesterday it rose to 7. Today it's at 19. So who does the district work with? So on a daily basis, we receive communication from the Illinois Department of Public Health. We receive daily updates and communication from the Kane County ROE. In particular, Pat Del Santo, our regional superintendent, makes sure that she sends us any and all updates. She also schedules meetings for us to meet with the Kane County Health Department. That is one of the reasons why you noticed the teacher was teasing me about not making it to spelling bee this year, because we had a mandatory meeting related to coronavirus that we had to go and attend. We also work with the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education has provided FAQs. There's a lot to this. This is more than just a health issue. It's greater than just closing a school. I think far too often we miss the sight of the fact of all the other things that we're responsible for during a school day, and we're going to touch on some of those later. For example, food service. For our students who do not get regular meals at home, what happens if you have to close a school for coronavirus? We'll address that here in a moment. What happens to statewide testing? What happens to prom? What happens to graduation if we reach a point where there are restrictions as far as large gatherings and events? So we'll talk more about that later today. We're not at that point, but I wanted to share with you who we're constantly working with at this time. We also receive regular updates as needed or as new information becomes available from the CDC, the Department of Homeland Security, and obviously our local villages, law enforcement, and others. We have a meeting scheduled for this Friday with that last group there listed to talk through coronavirus, what our responses would be, closure policies and practices, and I'll address much of this again here in a moment moving forward. Exclusion regulations. It's important to note, especially as families go out and get ready to travel outside of the country during spring break in particular, if you travel to a country that has a level 3 travel designation, meaning all non-essential travel should be avoided, and you return to the United States, that is a mandatory 14-day exclusion from school, no exceptions. That also is a fact if you leave for spring break and go visit a location that currently is not a level 3, and it is identified as a level 3 travel advisory during the course of your travel or immediately upon your return, we will exclude students and staff for 14 days at that time as well. That is the best possible way for us to contain and prevent a contact spread issue or community spread issue, as you hear most often shared in the media. School nurses. So our school nurses are also on the front line, as many of you know. We've taken some additional precautions. Every time we have influenza season, our nurses report any students with flu-like symptoms to Ms. Schmidt. She keeps a daily update and provides a regular update to my office, especially during this time of year and especially at this point with coronavirus. Nurses also work with the front desk staff. So many times we have front office staff who may answer the phone. The phones may not always be transferred to the nurse when a parent's calling their child in ill. It is important, and we continue to reiterate to our staff, that if someone calls their student in absent with an excused absence for illness, we ask if they have a fever. If they say yes, we will ask some subsequent follow-up questions such as travel and those types of things. That allows us to accurately capture all of these things. One of our principals is actually out of the building yesterday. I had the pleasure of covering Newbert Elementary School as principal of the morning. I would love to say principal of the day, but I got caught up and had to come out here. And so other staff provided afternoon coverage. But that morning alone, there were at least 3 parents that called in confirming that their child had strep throat. So I share that not because people need to know what's going on at Newbert, but there are other things happening in our community that might cause alarm or concern, and I want to address that just because someone has flu-like symptoms does not mean they have the coronavirus, and we have to be very careful because rumors and things, we've been dealing with some rumors and spread of rumors today throughout the afternoon as well. But our nurses will also, if a student presents in the clinic and has a fever, we'll provide a mask for that student so that there's no possible or no additional means for them to transmit potentially the virus to others. And they'll take additional precautions. As you know, our high school nursing clinics and our middle school nursing clinics tend to be a little larger, so they can service multiple students. Our elementary settings tend to be much smaller. So nurses will be proactive in ensuring that those students who come down to the clinic daily to take a prescription that they have, whether it's an asthma medicine, whether it's something for attention deficit disorder, there's any number of reasons why students come and are administered medications with a physician's note, we would keep those students isolated or separate from these other students. There's no reason for us to have those contacts. Nurses also will call parents and remind them to come pick up their children if they have a fever, and continue to remind parents to keep students home unless they've been fever-free for at least 24 hours. We realize that's inconvenient, but I think this virus in particular raises everyone's level of concern, and it's important to know that everybody plays a role in helping to prevent this from spreading. Cleaning. We do a great deal of cleaning, even the recent documentation that came out with updates for schools. I'm very pleased to say that we have met or exceeded those guidelines every year for the past couple of years. Dan Opal's team does an amazing job. In particular, our district uses that 10% bleach solution. I believe we just bought Granger out of all remaining bleach that they had so that we would have an adequate supply, and then we have some other resources as needed because there are other approved materials and or disinfectants that we're allowed to use. At this time, we rely on that 10% bleach solution. It has to sit on the surface for a specified period of time before we wipe it off. And we address all door handles, desks, countertops, lunch tables, and restrooms in particular. Those high usage, high touch areas where students frequently have their hands, and so do staff. Our staff will continue to use disinfectant wipes. You know, it's funny, every year when we talk about back to school supplies, there's always those 2 containers of Clorox disinfectant wipes, and I often hear, you know, if every kid brings them in, I still see them in the hallway. This is a great example of why we ask for some of those so that we can continuously wipe down surfaces in classrooms. And little ones tend to struggle more with contact issues, right? Meaning their personal space, there is no such thing as personal space. They're always very friendly to each other. They're always holding hands. I'm talking about younger ones. So those elementary students in the audience, I'm not referring to you. Obviously, you're very mature, and I don't have any concerns for you whatsoever. I'm really talking about our preschoolers and our elementary students. All the parents in the room have seen the commercial where the student keeps wiping his nose and he wipes it on his sister's doll, and the mom has this freaked out look on her face because she says that's not a tissue. I'm not going to say anything. I just think boys are worse than that than girls are. Now I'm speaking from personal experience. But we continue to do all those things. We'll continue to reinforce with staff the opportunities they have to wipe down things. In the event that the school is closed, we are currently working to secure a private company, an environmental services company that would come in and treat the whole school. Our staff would then go in after the fact. A school closure would be determined based off some guidance from ISB or even my conversations with the board and with the local health department. And a closure would go for as short a period of time as 7 days up to 14 days. And again, that's because the testing process is a little delayed, as well as the fact that there are no current vaccines. Buses are cleaned each day with approved disinfectants as well. So we've taken as many steps as we possibly can. In the FAQ that you saw that went out to families and to staff, if a student's physician feels it's in their best interest to wear a mask, the physician just has to simply provide us with a note, and they may wear an approved mask during the school day. I do not have any concerns at this time that students will start wearing masks to draw attention to themselves. Having worked in a hospital setting and worn a mask for an extended period of time, it is by far the most uncomfortable thing that you have to do. So I just don't see students trying to attempt to do that for any number of reasons other than the fact that they truly need it. But we're working very closely with local physicians to address issues as they arise. Travel advisories and restrictions. As the board and the community are aware, there are 3 current levels. Really the one that we're focused on most is the warning level 3, where the CDC recommends canceling all non-essential travel. There are currently 4 countries that are on that list for level 3 advisories. China remains on the list, Iran, Italy, and South Korea. Countries who are currently level 1 or level 2 restrictions are Japan and Hong Kong. There are currently no restrictions or directions or information about limiting travel within the continental United States at this time. So when would we close the school? So previously under H1N1, the swine flu, about 10 years ago, the guidance was that if we had more than 30% of our staff or students absent, that the state statute essentially says that if there's a disruption that prevents us from operating normally, we can close for what they term an act of God event, which is what this would be. This is not an emergency closure similar to a snow day. There is a difference between the two. An emergency closure requires that you make up those days. An act of God day does not. And we've received continued guidance from ISB clarifying that. We have not received guidance this time, so we've been operating under the assumption it might be 30%. We have learned that there may not be any formal guidance that comes forward, and individual school districts will be able to make their own determination. I think by and large we're waiting to have that conversation throughout the remainder of this week so that we're prepared and would be able to provide enough adequate notice to families in the event that we decided to have close a campus or multiple campuses as a result of positive tests or as a result of potential exposure events. There is a difference between the two, and that's why you close for 14 days. Being exposed to someone else who has the virus, the incubation period is 14 days, and that's why the closure would take that amount of time. Something for everybody to understand and consider. The school were affected. Obviously, we have a plan for that. The problem we run into is what happens if our bus fleet gets impacted. So if we lose more than 20 or 30% of our bus drivers, effectively we may have to look to do something different with school day anyways, simply because we would not be able to adequately transport all of our students on any given day. Now, obviously, that has a trickle-down effect because if the driver has coronavirus, they've now come into contact with probably 300 and some odd students on any given day, given their routes. So there's contact problems there. And so, again, we're waiting and reliant on a lot of guidance from the Department of Health and from others. So what happens if we close the school? If we close the school for 7 to 14 days, and again, it could change dependent on availability of a vaccine or dependent on the availability of a fast test. Presently, it takes 48 hours for the initial test. If a test is confirmed positive, it is then subsequently sent to the CDC. They do a second tier test on it to confirm a positive coronavirus indication, and so it can take up to 4 days. The exposure event, again, lasts 14 days because of the incubation period. We would look to offer e-learning. We would not look to do it any sooner than at least the third day of school. This is an ongoing conversation and one I have just tried. We will just start. We have done e-learning before. The board has approved it. We're one of the only counties actually in Kane, or districts in Kane County with an approved e-learning plan. We have some experience with it. We would use a combination of e-learning via Haiku and also via different types of platforms such as YouTube, through Facebook, or even through embedded videos. So we will have conversations about that this week and into next week to start to lay out a plan for this. Information to parents obviously will be sent out via RCS, email, posted on our school district websites so they know how to access information for home learning opportunities. It's also important that I clarify that if we close the school is closed. All activities associated with the school are closed and canceled. I understand that ISB's guidance this afternoon said that, they recognize that IHSA may not cancel events. I will say, if we get to the point where we close the school because of either confirmed cases or because students have been exposed to those with confirmed cases, we will not allow any clubs, any activities, or any athletics to take place. We've had in the past where we closed for a snow day, teams got together informally at a local rec center and continued to hold practices. We would address that very directly and very swiftly, and it could result in discipline. The whole point of us closing a school for 14 days is to isolate students and staff from the general community to prevent additional community spread. It does not make any sense to let people go outside of that. I cannot make sure everybody's locked in their house. But what I can do is make sure that everybody understands that means no after-school programs. That means no clubs, no other activities affiliated with this. And I completely understand that if we had an event tomorrow, for example, at Hampshire High School, their boys basketball team is playing in another sectional or regional championship, and the reality is they could have to miss it. But we will not continue to expose others knowingly when we've had a contagion event or we've had an exposure event or confirmed cases. We have to be as proactive and as diligent as we possibly can. I know I've had some initial conversations with Ms. Lamarca because she works very closely with the food pantry at CMS. No one will be caught off guard. So if we're tracking absences, we will know when absences are increasing, and as a result, we'll be able to provide forewarning and notice to organizations that, listen, you're trending upwards. If we hit this threshold, we will likely close the school. So we will be able to contact the Boys and Girls Club, After School Park District, and again, that's part of our meeting this Friday with the various organizations to make sure everybody's on the same page. Food service. If a school closes and it's a Title I building in particular, we will still provide food service. There's an expectation that we do so. We would not do it at that site, and we would not have people coming into a building. So, for example, if ABC Elementary School had to close because we had an outbreak of coronavirus or other issues, and that was a Title I building, we would prepare the food elsewhere in a grab-and-go format, box dinners, box lunches, and families could then come to a location that we've identified, and that has to be done in consultation with the state and with ISB. Because, again, we're trying not to expose people to other people, and they could get the food via that process. We've already started conversations with Aramark about what this might look like. They're prepared. They've already ramped up their training for staff as well so that there are no concerns amongst them, and how do they put the appropriate safeguards in place. It may not always be a hot meal. I'll be the first one to acknowledge that, because the environment and the situation may not be initially conducive to that. But we would be able to continue to provide food access to our families and our students. All three of our high schools, I didn't receive the information when I initially updated this morning. Jacobs, Dundee Crown, and Hampshire High Schools are all identified as points of distribution or points of dispensing sites. That means that the local health department, should a vaccine become available, they would actually use portions of our high school to administer vaccines at scale within the community. There are existing plans that provide how that would function and flow within our facilities, but they are dispensing sites. There are two types of dispensing sites. One is open, one is closed. The open is what we would manage, which is by and large a school-wide community type event. Question?
Well, did you say all three high schools?
All three high schools, yes. That's why, no, why I said I made an error. This morning, unfortunately, Mr. Rowling was not able to confirm that Hampshire High School was a confirmed pod site. He was able to do that late this afternoon. Working, absolutely.
So in that case, that if they identify and then they implement, and you and staff will assure that whatever else is going on, that those students and or staff will be isolated from anybody that's being treated or?
Yes, so very similar to how we manage polling locations in our buildings. This would follow that same process. Obviously, they would have more access through the later evenings and also on weekends. So this would be an ongoing event in our buildings. And again, that's going to require a great deal of coordination. But that's if and when a vaccine were to become available. Okay. Working remotely, it's a reality that with e-learning and other things, obviously at that point we are working remotely. But there's always other case scenarios. For example, what if we had a few confirmed cases of coronavirus here in this central office? Essentially, we would have to close central office, send everybody home for the 14 days. Schools could continue to operate, but staff would work 14 days remotely from home. And then we'd have to work around some issues because obviously there are other needs that arise to manage and operate a school district. And we may ultimately make the decision to close the whole district anyways. But we wanted to show that we're prepared for this. All of our senior admin team have started the conversations. I know the CAO team will be discussing this further on Monday. How do they hold meetings? How do we transfer phones so that we can continue to operate as normally as possible through an event, a closure event? So obviously questions that arise, some of you were part of the board 2 years ago, and you may recall that we had a slight mumps issue at Jacobs High School right up to close to the end of the school year. We were literally one confirmed case away from having to close early. Miss Valley has left. So she was the principal dealing with this. It was several cases amongst one of our boys, young men's athletic teams, and because they'd all been in contact with each other, we had several confirmed cases of the mumps. There is a threshold with the health department that basically says at some point you've got to close the school and communicate that to parents. We were one case away. We had a case come on as a case came off, and so we were able to make it to the end of the school year without having to close. But there were a lot of concerns at that time from staff about pregnancies, those who were pregnant, and obviously those, we also have staff who are immunosuppressed because they're being treated for any number of different medical conditions. There is no information currently available specific to coronavirus and these two issues, other than immunosuppressed in particular for the potential for respiratory infections or exposure. We are encouraging staff to work directly with their medical care provider, their local physicians, and then if they have special circumstances, we've made it known that we will work with them to provide whatever accommodations we possibly can. Large meetings and or events. This will probably continue to remain in the forefront in most conversations. There has been no directive at this time. I was watching the press conference today, and it was interesting that the representative from the Illinois Department of Public Health made a statement that they were recommending that for the elderly in particular, that they not attend large events or large group meetings. And then when they got to the Q&A portion, Governor Pritzker had to answer the question, well, does that mean you're canceling the St. Patrick's Day event downtown? And there was a quick resounding no. At this time, we have not made that decision. But it is interesting because large meetings and events, this is one of those areas I started to talk about earlier. I don't think people realize how much scope we manage on a given day. If at this time, if this were to persist through May and we saw a spike or a peak in our cases in late April or early May, these are all the reality. This is our reality. Statewide testing could be delayed. we may not even be able to get all the statewide testing in. And ISBE's working with the U.S. Department of Education to determine what happens if we can't report data, because they're required to by law. School dances, our PTO and booster meetings would be canceled. Fine arts performances would be canceled. Club events would be canceled. Athletics. I am aware of some school districts. We've actually provided an interview earlier today, and I received a survey that asked if we were aware of any students being profiled or being bullied because of their ethnicity related to this. But I am aware of some other districts who have told me that some other schools will not play against them because they have students who are from China or students from elsewhere. And that's disappointing to hear, and it's isolated, but it is happening. Prom, as much as I think we could make some accommodations through e-learning, you can't do an e-learning prom. We talked about it. I threw out a suggestion, but it didn't necessarily resonate with my team. Graduation promotion events. That is a big one for us. Even a delay of that means that we will not have a traditional graduation event. If we could secure, even if we could move the date for Sears and said, well, we'll do a graduation event in July, the reality is most kids have left for college or they've left the area. So how many students would we actually have participating at that point? So end of the year field trips, after school programs, conferences, professional development, a food pantry. There are so many implications for this and how it could adversely affect not just instruction, but our entire community and the culture in which we deliver school. These are all the great things that students look forward to at the end of the year, and we'd hate to see them adversely affected or impacted, but there is a likelihood that that could happen. Looking ahead, we're the first ones that acknowledge, I will be the first to acknowledge that spring break is here. Some school districts are already on break. Spring break typically spans upwards of a 6-week period of time across our region. Goes all the way into mid-April, because again, we are very close to 2 other states, Indiana, for example, and some states are already in spring break this week. We go in another week. We'll have spring break. So the reality of it is that's a great deal of travel. People are not just going to stay at home. They're not just going to travel within the continental United States. We will see increased travel outside of the country, and there's a likelihood of an exposure issue occurring at that time. So we will have to carefully monitor everything, not only leading up to spring break, but immediately upon return. When we send out some information later this week to parents, if not no later than Monday, but I have a feeling we'll get something out tomorrow or Friday, it will include a voluntary survey where we're going to ask parents to tell us, are you planning on traveling outside the United States? If yes, where? It's completely voluntary. We recognize that. But it would help us with tracking information and be able to anticipate any issues should we start to see numbers changing. We are also tracking and monitoring all of our upcoming events. You saw me list several of them. I know we're going to have a conversation later this evening about upcoming trips that are scheduled for over spring break and other times. We do track and monitor the sponsor name. Unfortunately, when we approve a contract, or let me rephrase that because we do not approve the contract. When the board approves a travel request, in conversation with Ms. O'Keefe, we're going to have to revise the school district policy. Currently, we're approving trips that do not even occur during the school period. We're not even involved. We don't negotiate the travel arrangements. We don't negotiate or sign off on the contracts. So there's likely to be a change in board policy, and we'll probably have 2 options. We'll have a district acknowledgement of travel saying, thank you for making us aware of it, but we have nothing to do with this. And then there's a district approval for school district related travel that goes outside the 100-mile radius and or travels outside of the state or outside of the country. It is an important differentiation because there is a potential for a liability exposure there for the district that we need to probably rectify moving forward.
Mr. Hyde, would you just clarify for the public, when you say we don't, who are you using as the we?
My office does not, nor do any of my staff approve contracts for much of this travel.
So the individual schools will be doing those contracts, or currently are doing those contracts?
In some cases, I would argue it's not even necessarily the school. There are long-standing practices where we have travel companies who have worked with our students and our teachers for a long period of time. And we become aware of them. Teachers always notify us. They do exactly what they should do. but no one, the building principal, for example, doesn't review the contract and approve it. Neither do we. So that's why we're also finding, when it comes to student travel, we're finding incredible discrepancies or disparities with some of the reimbursements that are being offered at this time. Many of the travel companies have intentionally said that without a travel advisory, they will not issue a refund. And in others, it's really dependent on whether or not the families purchased partial and or full insurance coverage for the trip. And I'll provide some more information later on that. Again, at this time, we're not aware of any restrictions to travel, but I know that's going to be discussion later this evening. And I just provided a list of all the resources and where we continue to pull information from on a regular daily basis. Any questions?
Board members?
Well, I have one.
Okay.
I don't know if this is covered by our labor agreements, but if not, I would hope that we would quickly rectify that and make sure that our staff, whether covered by a labor agreement or not, are paid should they be forced to stay home.
Yeah, I think so instructionally, if we do the e-learning, staff would be paid. And we have committed that if there's a closure event for those other staff, paraeducators and others, they would have the choice to either do some of the things like that's the remote work issues. So there's always things that can be updated. There's, secretaries would still be answering phones and responding to emails. I mean, we would essentially operate, but we're operating virtually. Those who chose not to participate in that could take leave. And then but we would, here's my assurance, no one will be harmed financially.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know do we have is that in the agreement or is that a verbal agreement?
At present, that is our verbal commitment.
I would think you'd want to formalize that make sure the teachers get paid and staff gets paid.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you see who recommended that, Mike? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
I believe we recommended that first, but that's okay.
Mr. Hyde, go back to your, if you would, the looking ahead slide. To me, that's really the key slide, right? And I guess I know that we've got to implore staff, we've got to implore families in our district to report. If they plan to go out of this country, they need to share that with a building leader. That's the only way that we have a chance to then go to that next slide and do all those wonderful things that our children want to do. Mm-hmm. Because if the fact is, if one student, one family comes back from one of those countries and they attend class on that Monday, then things change dramatically for all of us.
Well, in your party, to a specific isolated event that took place this afternoon,
yes.
You came across it, and then we got confirmation of it. Someone posted on Facebook that they were told that there's a family that just returned from Italy, didn't tell anybody, and allowed their students to attend one of our high schools today. Completely false. It eventually was deleted, thankfully, but that's what we're dealing with now. We're chasing all these rumors, and so having the information ahead of time would really help us be able to mitigate some of those rumors and to better facilitate communication within a building with the health department. So we understand it's voluntary. We will absolutely encourage it, but it is important that we have that information.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hyde on this? Okay. Thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
Okay. Agenda item number 9 is a legislative update. Ms. Settler or Mr. Hyde, do we have anything?
The only legislative update we would bring to your attention is as you know, the evidence-based funding formula continues to provide additional revenue to Tier 1, Tier 2 school districts. In particular, this year, our district would have expected to see an increase from last year's evidence-based funding allocation. Unfortunately, the governor's budget currently says that the extra $150 million, it was $150, correct, Ms. Harkin, not $120? $150 million that was to be infused into the evidence-based funding formula and then subsequently allocated is now on hold pending the passage of his tax plan. So obviously, many of the school districts are being very vocal. That could equate up to as much as $2 million additional dollars for our school district. So clearly, we're advocating. We understand his interest in changing the tax format, but that school funding has been toyed with for so long, and we finally have a mechanism that adequately and fairly funds our schools. Why start tinkering with that now? Fulfill the commitment. There's no difference between them holding back these dollars or the old policy and practice that many of you have come up through of the proration, where we're told, well, we'll give you $10,000 per kid, but there's not enough money, so we're going to prorate that and only give you $7,000 per kid. And so we get shortchanged. And then again, what ends up happening is local effort ends up having to pick up the ball for where the legislature failed to. And then again, we get into the conversation about local taxes and local tax rates. So that's the only thing out there at this time. They are in session. There's a number of bills being proposed. And I will work with Ms. Zettler and Ms. McNichols. Now that we're getting regular updates, I'll provide you with a comprehensive list to see what, if any, we want to address.
Did we include that $2 million in our budget?
Not at this time.
Well, okay, good.
Projection-wise, for any information, yeah, no, sir. Based off the numbers you've seen recently, no, sir. That's not included in there.
Okay, so now we move to public participation. We do have 9 people registered for public participation, both students and parents. So I'd like to share a couple of things about public participation at our meetings. You must be 18 or older or have a parent or guardian with you. Give your full name and provide your comments. Please limit your presentation to 5 minutes or less. We ask you to refrain from using any specific staff members' names or student names. With that, I will call forward, and please come up to the podium here, Michaela Norman and Grace Bourbon. And they are students. And you do have a parent with you. Good. Welcome, Michaela. Welcome, Grace. Who's Michaela? Who's Grace? Okay, welcome.
Good evening, we are Grace Bourbon. And I'm Michaela Norman. We are former students of Dundee Highlands Elementary School and are both 8th grade students at Dundee Middle School. We are here on behalf of our Silver Award project for Girl Scouts. The Silver Award is a small group or partner-led project that results in lasting changes in the community given out by Girl Scouts.
We are requesting your permission to build a Gaga Ball pit on Dundee Highlands Elementary School property. We chose this as a Silver Award project because we are both Double Scouts, BSA, and Girl Scout America. If you don't know already, Gaga Ball pit is a game where it's an 8-sided, outdoor game, and you basically have to have a...
There you go, a little closer for us.
And you kind of push around a ball, and you try to hit the other people's knees or below to get them out.
Both organizations teach that merit and work can result in fun, and we believe that this is a substantial representation of this belief. By building the Gaga Ball pit, we are creating a fun-spirited goal to play the game, of course, and give more structure for youth to play on.
Recently, there has been a decline in playgrounds around the nation that has been forced kids inside. By creating a Gaga Ball pit, we are adding onto a playground and helping children who want to be outdoors and encouraging those who prefer to be indoors and come play outside.
After building the structure, we will hopefully see an immediate impact. For example, kids are participating and playing Gaga Ball. This will impact the playground by giving it a lighter and more fun atmosphere. Our goals for the project are as follows: to build substantial equipment, to help others go out and play more, and to make a difference at Dundee Highlands.
This project will have no cost to the district. We have sent in donation letters to multiple companies and will pay for the rest the project through our TOOT funds.
Our timeline is not constricted. However, we would like to have this project completed by June 5th, and we will need potential dates where we could come in and set up our Gaga Ball pit if this project is approved.
We would like an opportunity to speak with Building and Grounds in regard to the best placement and time to install the Gaga Ball pit.
We hope you will keep this project in consideration. Thank you for your time.
Very good.
The board typically won't interact with you, but I usually break that rule and do. Are you saying you'd like to meet with Buildings and Grounds, or you have already met with Buildings and Grounds? You would like to. The gentleman sitting in the back who's waving at you, that's Dan Opels. He would love nothing more than to talk with you ladies about your proposal, okay? He is the man. He will tell me whether or not we can do it, and then good luck to you. Great job.
We thank you for being here.
And thank you, Mom.
Okay, Stacy Davis.
Okay, well, that's a tough act to follow. My name is Stacy Davis. I'm a longtime dual language parent, as you know, and supporter. And I know it wasn't on our agenda tonight, but I just wanted to formally ask that, or say rather, that I'm very thankful that Mr. Hyde and his team and the board are considering additional options for the dual language program. I think both options presented really do satisfy a lot of our concerns and needs, and we genuinely appreciate your involvement and ability to listen and respond, do more research, and come up with some alternative solutions. So I look very forward to hearing from Mr. Hyde in the April meeting with his final recommendation. I think both are outstanding opportunities, not only for the children currently in the program, but for those that are also hopefully going to continue for the long term. And I know in today's meeting in particular, you touched upon the 2020 census, and though none of us are certainly experts in demographics or what that information may hold, I think it's very important to pay attention to it, because what we're going to see is that the Hispanic-speaking population, or the Spanish-speaking population in this country, is going to grow dramatically. In fact, it's thought that by the year 2044 that we will be a majority minority country, and that has very significant long-term impact on the way we structure our other language education, with Spanish being, of course, very important. So again, I'm just very thankful for the additional options and resources that you've put into that, and I just want you to know that we genuinely appreciate it, and we feel very confident that the board will be able to, along with Mr. Hyde's direction, come up with a solution that really does help our students and community in both the short term and, more importantly, the long term. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll just add, if I may. Unfortunately, meeting with them apparently took it all out of me, because as you know, I missed the board meeting and because I fell ill. Just for clarification, because I know I see other dual language parents here, option 2 is the decision moving forward. Option 2 allows students to be grandfathered in through DMS. We will bring back a kindergarten class for enrollment. We still are exploring many of the questions that existed that night, was whether or not we would continue to provide any type of prioritization. Those numbers have to continue to be analyzed, because again, I agreed to reviewing that, but did not commit to honoring that, because I don't believe that that lottery is a fair lottery. The decision to do an addition, as I explained that evening, is going to be contingent upon further committee meetings that would not occur until April or through April. And the reason for that is the board has to weigh various options of new school construction to meet some of our capacity issues versus an addition, and either one of which might satisfy our long-term dual language needs or interests. So I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page that moving forward, option 2, which was discussed, is exactly what we will continue to honor. That may change into option 3 in the future. All right, whether it happens immediately now or there's a commitment in a year to do the addition is the clarification. So I just don't want anybody feeling like we're still at option 1. We're not. Option 2 is the recommendation moving forward, and I will be scheduling, as I committed to that evening, I'll be scheduling some follow-up meetings with parents so we can discuss next steps, because Mr. Perdomo is holding back on some things, and he will be communicating through April asking parents to prioritize their school enrollments so that we can look at where students might fall and make a decision as to whether or not the lottery is even needed at that point, because it may self-sort. So we'll explore that, and we'll get back to you about scheduling those dates and times. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Angie Shriver.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
My name is Angie Shriver, and my son attends Lakewood in first grade two-way dual language program. Up until about a month ago, I didn't know some of the parents in this room tonight. I just want to let you know how lucky we are. We are lucky to have parents in the school district that believe wholeheartedly in this program. Many of us have made sacrifices for our children because we see the value in this program. Many of us had many sleepless nights worried about the changes for the dual language program. If there is one thing that I have learned about these group of parents is that we are not only here to advocate for our own children, we are here to advocate for future District 300 families. For many of these families, myself included, we could go with option 2, which I guess that's what we're doing, and call it a night, and it would make many of us happy. But I feel like it won't. Why? Because we want what's best for all of our kids in the school district. We want many District 300 families to also reap the benefits of such a wonderful program, and the only way I feel to make that happen is to consider option 3. I am here tonight to urge you to please consider option 3. Option 3 seems like the only option that would address many of the issues that we have been experiencing in our dual language program. At our last board meeting, some of you, I believe, were under the impression that the addition to Westfield is because of the dual program, but it is my understanding that the addition was already proposed at an October meeting to address capacity issues. This, to me, tells me that the space is something that will eventually be needed. Something else that I would like you to reconsider is the elimination of sibling priority. I only have one child. And I do not have to worry about this, but as a two-way dual language teacher myself, I find this to be a little bit problematic. I can't begin to imagine the worries for many of our families that will be impacted by the possibility of eliminating this. I immediately think of the social emotional impact this could have on families down the road. I can't imagine that one child in your home, I'm sorry, hold on. I can't imagine having more than one child in your home and only having one of them become bilingual and the other cannot. I think it's a little unfair to have more opportunities and doors open for one child and not the other. Sure, the other child can take classes at the middle school or high school, but there is something to be said about learning a new language from a very young age. Here are a couple reasons as to why sibling priority should be supported. Students' outcomes may be stronger if a household has at least 2 speakers that will support each other in the partner language, especially when that language is not spoken by parents at home. Families become more supportive of and invested in the dual process as they become more familiar with dual language instruction. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I am asking that you please take into consideration option 3 and keep sibling priority for our dual language programs.
Thank you. Thank you. Janessa Gober.
Hi, good evening, school board, Mr. Hyde, committee members, and families. My name is Janessa Gober. You heard me speak a while ago. I'm a parent. I have 3 students in the dual language program here. I just first and foremost wanted to say thank you for listening to us and all of our concerns. I appreciate that you have taken so much of your own personal time out of your schedules to listen and to offer us some proposed solutions to address our concerns. As you can see, we're a very dedicated and passionate parent group. We value the dual language program very much, and we want it to continue to flourish and grow. If you look at the numbers of our total applicants into the dual language program, which I shared with some of you between the years of 2015, 16, and 2019 and 2020, you'll see that it quadrupled. So that's huge growth. So you can see that there's a strong demand for this program. Parents want their children to be bilingual and biliterate. We're living in a global economy. We talked about that a little bit today, some of the negatives. but having a second language will soon not just be a luxury, but a necessity. If we want our kids to be competitive in the workforce, we need to have long-term solutions. We are in favor of option number 3 because it allows the district to expand the program so that more families can take advantage of this program while addressing capacity and rezoning issues due to the Long Meadow Highway project. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Lucas Gober. Lucas, you're related to that nice lady that just spoke?
Related to me? No.
Yes. Okay.
This is a stranger. Good evening, board members and Mr. Hyde. My name is Lucas Gober, and I am in the 5th grader. I'm a 5th grader at Liberty Elementary in the dual language program. I'm glad now that I will be able to go to DMS with all my friends because of option 2. I'm also happy because I will now be able to have this opportunity through middle school and my whole life. But we do not have a close place for the future people to come, and I have a sister who's currently in preschool and will be going into kindergarten in 2 years. She's supposed to go to Liberty and learn both English and Spanish, but you can't go there anymore. Now she has to take a long bus ride to a school further away. We heard about option 3. They could add dual language to Westfield. I think it's a good option because it is close to people on the west side, and there could be more kids added to dual language. I hope my sister and lots of other kids get the opportunity for dual language. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Lucas. Eric Johnson.
Hi, my name is Eric Johnson. I have a 5th grader and a 1st grader in the dual language program. So as Janessa said, we are very dedicated to this. I just wanted to point out a couple things that kind of I caught on the last board meeting when we talked about the option 3 potential for issues of other groups of families coming in here and having to do this all over again because now there's families with new concerns because of displacement from other schools or what have you. And one of the things that we're under the impression of is that the rezoning of the Long Meadow portion or south of Long Meadow, our understanding is that needs to happen anyway. So I don't want that to be looked at as dual language being added to Westfield and that rezoning taking place because of that. To me, it's more along the lines of if that's going to happen anyway, it shouldn't be necessarily considered negatively towards what we're talking about with the option 3. In addition to that, my understanding is that if option 3 were to happen, that there could be other programs that could end up being moved. And I don't know the full logistics of those things, but I'd like it to be considered that if these are state mandated programs that have transportation provided and stuff, that maybe the impact might be a little less, considering that the dual language program is an elective versus these other programs. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Anthony Rodriguez. Welcome, Anthony. Who do you have with you?
My dad.
Oh, okay. Hi, Dad.
Hi, my name is Anthony Rodriguez, and I'm in the 5th grade Liberty Elementary Dual Language Program. I do like options 2 and 3 better than option 1. My favorite option is option 3 because the dual language program will continue at Liberty while Westfield's addition is being built. Also, 5th graders, 4th graders, and 3rd graders will still be able to go to DMS and continue dual. Option 3 also supports the dual language program on the west side of the river. It will give opportunities to the families on the west side of the river to continue dual. Another reason is that Westfield is a K-8 school. It will continue dual language at the same school and with their same friends. I really hope that the board and our superintendent gladly support option 3 the most. Gracias por su tiempo. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anthony. And then David Rodriguez?
It's funny, he basically said almost everything I was going to say. So right now the option is option number 2. Apparently, that's what Mr. Hyde recommended. Did I hear when you said when you last spoke about continuing kindergarten? Did you say that would continue it at Liberty?
For the short term, yes, because we want to ensure that we avoid a gap.
Okay.
The question right now, which and I did share that evening, that we could explore the option of bringing kindergarten class back to Liberty for this upcoming school year. Okay. The question is whether or not we would provide sibling priority and or zone priority for students going into that kindergarten class, because again, by and large, that has excluded others. Mm-hmm. And so it would be, my inclination is to go to more of a traditional lottery, but on the application, parents would rank order their schools of preference, and we're able to monitor some of that while we continue to do the analysis. As you recall from that community meeting, there were 19 parents that raised their hands that said that they would have future kindergartners. One family in particular would have 3 consecutive years of kindergartners coming in. So it wasn't, and I know the request was, can we just do it for this year? In fairness to everyone, as we try to problem solve, I would feel bad if I just said, yes, we're only going to do it for 1 year, but the rest of you don't get to do it, because some families have a gap year, and I believe was that not your case, that you'll have a kindergartner
No.
in 2 years, or somebody else would?
No.
So that's what I'm referring to. So we still have to explore that. We would offer a kindergarten class next year. Okay. However, whether or not that would give priority to siblings and or to zone privilege has yet to be determined.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So knowing that, I would obviously like you guys to support option 3 going forward, whether that's next year, or like you said, a year down the road, just because I think it, especially being in a K-8 school, really, I don't know, it allows the program to really continue evenly in a K-8 school. I think it's ideal for a dual language program, and I also think that by building the addition that it will give more opportunities to families who would otherwise not participate in the dual language program in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then Mr. Felix Redondo. Felix? No? Okay. All right, that concludes the public participation. Okay, we'll move on to item 11, consent items under 25,000. We do have one request to pull agenda item number 6, which is out of district travel. So this agenda item now will be under roll call 1222. So with consent items, I need a motion to approve. And second?
Second.
Stevens, aye. Zettler?
Aye.
Lamarca?
Aye.
Fiorentino?
Aye.
4-0.
Okay, now we're going to go through several roll call action items. 12.1. This is the approval of asbestos design, inspection services, project management, and air sampling contracts. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You want to do it that way?
No.
Okay.
Not if you don't have to.
Since we have 20 items, I would like to do it that way.
Zettler?
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino?
Aye.
Lamarca?
Aye.
4-0, motion carried.
And 12.2, approval of audit services.
So moved.
Second.
Stevens, aye. Lamarca?
Aye.
Aye. Fiorentino?
Aye.
Zettler?
Aye.
Motion carried, 4-0.
12.3, approval of athletic training RFP.
Moved.
Second. Lamarca?
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Zettler?
Aye.
Fiorentino?
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
And 12.4 is approval of buildings and ground equipment bid.
So move.
Second.
Stevens, aye. Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Zettler.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
Agenda item 12.5, approval of bus lift bid.
So moved.
Second.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Zettler,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
12.6, approval of Chromebook cases bid.
So moved.
Second.
Zettler,
Aye.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Motion carried 4-0.
Approval of the cosmetology program contract.
So moved.
Second.
Zettler,
Aye.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
12.8 is approval of the college and career readiness system contract.
So moved.
Second.
Zettler,
Aye.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Motion carried 4-0.
12.9, approval of copier equipment replacement and copier printer maintenance RFP.
So moved.
Second.
Zettler,
Nope.
Lamarca,
Aye.
I'm sorry, I did that backwards.
Yeah.
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
12.10, approval of E-rate category 1 and 2 RFP.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Stevens, aye. Zettler,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Lamarca.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Approval of the entrepreneurship pathway program contract.
So moved.
Second.
Zettler,
Aye.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-0.
12.12, approval of instructional software electronic subscription contracts.
So moved.
Second. Zettler,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
12.13, approval of our mulch bid.
So moved.
Second.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Zettler,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Motion carries 4-0.
12.14, approval of our welder bid.
So moved.
Second.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Zettler,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
12.15, approval of the NIA license and service agreement.
So move.
Second.
Stevens, aye. Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino.
I'm going to abstain from these because I'm on the current board for NIA, so.
Okay.
Well, you don't have a quorum then.
Would we?
We
Is that
do,
part
yeah.
of the quorum?
It is, we
It's
check with
okay.
Colin, yes.
Zettler,
Aye.
motion carried 3-1 abstention.
And 12.16, approval of NIA services and fee contract.
So moved.
Gonna hold on a second. I'm on page 2. Lamarca,
Aye.
Zettler,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino.
And I'll abstain from this as well.
Motion carried 3 with 1 abstention. 3-0.
Thank you. 12.17, approval of uniforms custodial bid.
So moved.
Second.
Zettler,
Aye.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Stevens, aye. Motion carries 4-0.
12.18, approval of waste and recycling bid.
So move.
Second.
Stevens, aye. Zettler.
Aye.
Lamarca.
Aye.
Fiorentino.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
12.21, approval of resolution.
12.19.
I'm sorry, 12.19, approval to display the science curriculum.
So move.
Second.
Stevens is aye. Zettler.
Aye.
Fiorentino.
Aye.
Lamarca.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Right,
This is a resolution for 1221. You have to read this.
correct. Okay, 12.21 is approval of a resolution.
12:20.
We pull that, we amended that agenda, that was
I'm sorry.
removed. 12.21, I'll read the resolution. Whereas the Board of Education of School District 300, Kane, McHenry, Cook, and DeKalb Counties, Illinois, has received reports and recommendations from the superintendent and members of the administrative staff concerning the elimination of one part-time Spanish teacher in the district, and whereas the Board of Education is required to notify certified staff members of honorable dismissal at least 45 days before the close of the school term due to the board's decision to decrease the number of certified staff employed by the board or to discontinue some particular certified persons. Whereas the Board of Education is determined to discontinue one part-time Spanish teacher, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of School District 300, Kane, McHenry, Cook, and DeKalb Counties, Illinois, as followed. Section 1. The certified staff named in Exhibit 1 shall be honorably dismissed effective at the close of the 2019-2020 school term. Section 2, the certified staff named in Exhibit 1 are honorably dismissed without recall rights due to their status as a part-time employee. Section 3, the notices of honorable dismissal shall be substantially in the form of the attached Exhibit 2, attached hereto, and made a part hereof. Section 4, the President and Secretary of this Board of Education are hereby authorized and directed to give by personal service, regular mail, and certified mail, return receipt requested, the notices of honorable dismissal. And Section 5, the resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its adoption. Do I read the?
So,
Okay.
do you have to read more?
Nope.
So move.
Second?
Stevens, aye. Fiorentino.
Aye.
Lamarca.
Aye.
Zettler.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. And then item 1222 is now out of district travel. Discussion.
You want to have a motion and a second first?
Do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Entertain a
moved.
motion? Second?
All right, I'm the one that asked to have that item pulled. I know this may be somewhat not popular, but so much of what we're hearing today about the coronavirus, I'm of the belief, and I believe many other people are of the belief, that due to the testing of our population, we are grossly under-tested, and we really have no idea of how significant this is or will be, and that is changing rapidly. And while Mr. Hyde said that there is no formal recommendation to avoid large groups, I have heard CDC say that we should avoid large groups, although it's not a formal recommendation, and I believe that we should restrict all school travel, and therefore I will vote no on that topic.
Then what happens to travel that's been previously approved that might be occurring?
I'm recommending on this particular motion that we do not approve the out-of-district travel to Washington, and then what happens to previously approved that has not yet occurred is a different discussion.
Okay.
Does this cover students and staff and board and administration, everything? Everybody? Okay.
Just students and staff at this time.
Okay, students and staff.
Do we have an option to put something in front of the participants of one of these trips that waives all liability and, trying to say, where's Colleen when you need her? You know what I'm trying to say?
The answer is no. We're
No?
not a party to the contracts. So here's the concern. In the absence of a formal recommendation from the government or from the state to prohibit travel, if the board takes action and says that they're not going to support these 2 trips, there are a total of 5 DC trips, in addition to which almost 8 fine arts trips, and then subsequently we have 10 athletic trips, all scheduled within the same period of time. And so I with respect to Mr. Stevens, because the item before the board are the 2 approval of these 2, but that is not what you're really going to have to address comprehensively.
No, but if you believe that we are grossly undertested in this country and that it's going to dramatically change over the next few weeks, I would still support that we do not support outside of the district travel. I mean, they're predicting that by May 8th, there will be no hospital beds available in the country.
Understood. I think our position would be to make sure that parents make an informed decision, since again, these decisions and contracts happened outside of the district. If we forbid this travel, the travel companies have made it known that outside of a directive from the state, they will not issue refunds.
If the parents wish to allow their child to go on such a trip, and they want to arrange a trip, and one of our teachers wants to volunteer to chaperone, fine, but I don't want to condone it as a school district.
I mean, to me, then we have to address like Mr. Hyde just said, what do we do about all these other trips? And then we're taking on a huge piece of liability from that standpoint. Mr. Hyde, what makes these 2 trips different from all the other ones that you mentioned? Is there anything that differentiates them except they're just now coming before us?
Just the timeline in which they brought the trip forward to the board.
The other recommendation is that if at all possible, you're supposed to keep 6 feet away from people. I mean, we're not doing that tonight, but on a bus in Washington, I know it's a financial situation, but I think it's a health situation that should override that. But of course, as always, I will abide by the board's decision.
Can Mr. Hyde looking up the background on this, DMS is using Bright Smart Travel, and HMS is using World Strides Travel. Have we, or could we go to them? Could the building leader go to them to see what the status is? And also, since this is up for a vote, if we choose to approve this and the status does change, will we then go to them, regardless of what the board said as far as approval?
So if the board 2 questions, I'll address the second one first. Okay. If the board approves the travel, and it's more of an acknowledgement of travel, because again, we have no involvement in the planning, the collection, or the travel at all. If there were to be a policy change and there is a directive not to travel or restrict travel for non-essential travel purposes, then yes, those companies would then, through their own insurance, be able to issue refunds or look to reschedule the trip. I know Mr. Shimshak is here. I've been working very closely with both schools. We've requested copies of the contracts. They've also forwarded us the communications and letters that they've sent to families. Again, none of this is coming through us. Families typically pay the travel companies directly. And so as a result, there's very little control that we have. I just have to look at this from 2 perspectives. People are traveling over spring break in far larger numbers than will travel on these school trips. I think parents should be afforded the opportunity to make an informed decision, understanding what the consequences are. Parents are tracking and monitoring this health issue. I do not disagree with Mr. Stevens in any way, but I think that the scope of this becomes really large. And it is, I would be the first to admit, at some level it does become a financial concern because we're looking at the potential for over $500,000 in refunds. And again, because the board takes action.
When you say $500,000, that includes the music theater trips that are coming up in May and June, correct?
Now, that's my rough estimate is there's $431,704 in trips for the fine arts alone, including the middle school trips to D.C., and another $36,000 in travel associated with athletics. And not all of the middle school trips for DC are reflected here. There was $270,000 worth of trips on the books. I think that there is a financial exposure that the district faces. And again, since we were not a party to the contract, I don't even know that we would have a legal basis to dispute their refund policy.
Well, let me just comment on a couple things. As you know, I was not scheduled to be here this evening. My work assignment in Orlando got canceled at the last minute, and United Airlines, although they don't have an obligation to, refunded my ticket price 100%. If these transportation companies are the same ones that always take our kids when we take trips, if they're told we need you to work with us or we won't work with you next year, that might have some weight.
We have addressed several in that regard. We've even provided the letter from ISB that strongly encourages companies to be flexible. And I think, I won't put another board member out there, but I know we have a board member who is personally dealing with a very similar issue. And they have been told you're not getting a refund, even though the travel company says on the airline that group is going to be traveling with, on their website it says we are issuing full refunds, and yet the travel company that they're working with has not offered that refund back to the participants.
I'm aware of that, but let me ask you this. If we're not a party to the contract, why are we approving the travel?
That was the conversation we had earlier.
We got to change that. Okay.
The district essentially has been authorizing travel outside of the school year. So, for example, trips that occur over spring break, trips that occur at the end of the school year over the summer, the board has, as a matter of policy, has always approved trips that go outside of a 100-mile radius or outside of the state or even outside of the country. I think that's a really good question, and one that until this issue arose, Mr. Stevens, you're absolutely right. This particular situation has caused us to step back, and Ms. O'Keefe and I have had long conversations about this is our concern. What is our liability?
So a few meetings ago, we approved, I believe it was athletic teams to go to Florida and I believe Nashville.
Correct.
Although we approved them, if in a few weeks prior to those trips that we believe that there is a change, things have changed drastically and our students or staff or coaches and that may be at harm's way, we still have the ability to pull those back.
At that point, I would say then yes, the board would be acting when we would potentially continue to have an exposure risk, but the hope would be that there would be state or federal guidance that would force these companies to issue a refund. It's very similar, as you know, when you're traveling with an airline, there's a difference between a mechanical issue or an act of God issue. They're treating this as an act of God issue, so it's like a weather delay. We don't have to issue a refund. But if we have a mechanical issue or the failures on our part as a company, then they're going to issue the refund. Without that guidance, and had I not seen some of those letters, and I'll be more than happy to forward those, where they're said, there is no travel advisory, we're not issuing refunds.
Would it not help them, though, if the board voted no? Would it not give them more weight to cancel that contract?
I honestly, the money has already been paid. Students, as you know, for these trips tend to do fundraisers and collections and deposits throughout the year. We're talking about a voluminous request as well of Ms. O'Keefe to review all the contracts associated with all of these travel events. I think that's important to note. Are we willing to? Certainly. If the board says they'd like to give me that directive to follow through and see what we can continue to accommodate. But I've already tried to interject at least once on one other travel event and been told very clearly that we are neither the sponsor nor the coordinator, and they don't even have an obligation to communicate with us. And I did, at that point, Mr. Stevens, flex our muscle and say, well, then we don't have to do business with you in the future. But here's the interesting thing. We're not doing business with them now. the teachers, again, and it's no fault of our staff. We have a trip, for example, that was scheduled to go to Italy. That teacher inherited this project from a retiring teacher years ago, and until this type of situation arose, we've never really found ourselves in conflict. I think it does clearly state, or does clearly present an interesting dilemma, which is, I completely agree. On one hand, we want to make sure that we are being conscientious and we're protecting our students and our community. Absolutely agree. I think the extent of our obligation then is, are we messaging and making sure parents are well informed and let them make the ultimate decision versus us in interjecting ourselves. But again, if that's the board's direction or directive, we will follow through.
Well, I appreciate the fact that this has opened up a can of worms. I understand that.
It has.
And I mean, you're committing money before you ever get approval that you can't get refunded. That's a problem. It's a question of whether or not the board has any liability at all because we're voting on it. But I will be a no vote.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we pull this until we get better understanding of what our liability is and whether or not we can even approve or disapprove something like this?
The problem is we have trips coming up in the next 2 weeks, and this board does not meet again until April.
I still would rather not vote, frankly.
Could we pull it? What's Robert's rules say about that?
The board can pull the item completely.
Well, if we're preventing these other trips to happen from happening, though, it doesn't. I hate to say it this way, but it doesn't seem fair because
The
we've
problem
already
is they will have
approved.
completed their travel before
Yeah.
this even comes back to you.
Right.
Yeah, if we vote, we
We're already on the books for the other ones.
I
Outside of the problem we run into, and I don't disagree with what Ms. Harkins is saying, is the legal one. Board policy is explicit as it relates to travel at this time. Without an amendment to board policy for travel approval, I would say you have an obligation to either approve or deny it. But if you want to pull it for further discussion, the problem is you need to understand everybody else will travel who already has prior approval before this ever returns back to the board.
So the two groups that we were approving tonight are just grounded. They can't go. That's why I'm saying I don't think that's really
Actually,
fair.
no, we have no direction at that point.
Well, are they going to go or are they not going to go if we don't vote tonight?
Unless the board tells me they can't go or can go, I don't know. I'd have to follow up.
Because that's not fair.
I disagree. It's not fair that we have a virus.
So I appreciate that, but that's not the point.
I understand that. I understand that. But what I'm saying is the situation the situation has changed, and life is not fair. I'm sorry that some have gone or approved. This is before this got to this level.
If you're worried from a liability standpoint, your liability is out there.
My liability concern is secondary. My concern for the kids is primary.
Well, I mean, parents know whether or not they're going to send their kids. I don't think you should usurp their authority to decide what's going on with their kids.
It has a lot to do with it.
Well, not really.
I
I'm
don't at
actually.
all. I totally disagree.
Yeah.
You vote however you want. I'm going to be a no.
So the way I see this is, though, with the information we have today, that's what changed Mr. Stevens, because we did approve travel a month ago, and at that time, it was
Actually,
very-
we approved travel last meeting. We approved
Yeah.
a trip to Peru, but not until next summer.
Well, that's
right.
almost
But
2
I'm
years
just saying
away.
this
That's a
is
very-
what we've been doing.
Right.
Cases a
Yeah.
month ago.
Right. So we're in my point is that it's a very different situation than it was when we voted on those. And Mr. Stevens is raising this because things are very different today than they were yesterday, even at O'Hare. So,
And the odds are it will be very different a month from now than it is today.
so before you, we have then 12.22. We have 4 of us to vote. Like to entertain a motion.
Don't vote like Nancy is suggesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a motion on the floor.
We'd have
You
to-
could amend it to pull it if you want.
Currently, there's a motion to vote on this item.
All right. So I would like to move to pull it and table it for now.
You want to amend the current motion to
Yes.
pull the item off of the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, so then we have to vote on that.
We have to motion.
Second.
We have a second.
Okay.
Second for that motion.
I just don't understand where that leaves the schools. That's frustrating that we don't know. Where does that leave the schools that need to know? We just don't know.
I'm really not supposed to answer the question because there's a motion, and the
Oh,
board has
okay.
to vote on the motion.
You can vote the motion, motion to amend down if you want.
We do need a second, and then we can vote it down, but
You
there
can
is a
vote it
motion.
down.
Do we have a second? If there is no second, then we consider it to be voted down. So, Mr. Hyde, would you like to weigh in on this?
Oh, my word.
I'm sorry, did the motion pass or fail?
It did not.
So it fails for lack of a second. Okay. I think at the end of the day, the school would basically be told that they cannot travel if there were no vote. Simply because our current board policy is very explicit that we have to approve and authorize travel outside of certain radius of the school district, or those that leave the state or those that leave the country. So my interpretation, without the advice of counsel, would be that that's the situation they find themselves in.
So these are 2 trips that are supposedly going to happen within the next month before we meet again? Okay.
The principal?
Right.
And the second one is GMS, and they're leaving in May 1st.
Okay. So,
HMS would have to.
and they're going,
Mr. Hyde, can we have Mr. Shimshak come up since he's here?
It's outside of him. It's the contracts with the teacher. Okay. I mean, we can bring, I'd be more than happy to bring him up. I just don't know what the context of the question would be because it's not relevant.
Could I open up another Pandora's box?
Please.
Why not?
Sure, Joe.
You're saying you've looked at all the trips scheduled, and it's totaling about $500,000.
And have they improved?
What is our current reserve number, or our, Susan, what's the number I'm thinking about? The what?
40% of our total budget, so.
I just point of record, that's 10 positions, 10 instructional positions that I will come back to the board and ask for, whether it's social workers or other positions, that we would be spending to offset travel costs.
Wait a minute. You just said you were at 40% right now.
With the understanding that committees still have to vote on school construction, possibility of a new school, all kinds of issues.
All included in there. I'm confused. When I'm talking about what's the name of the thing I'm talking about, Susan?
Fund balance.
It's correct, which is, that only is based upon what current
Approved projects.
approved expenses that we have. This item is not currently in the budget, so we would need to amend the budget, as well as the things that we talked about tonight with an addition to a new school and no concerns about future EBF funding, which currently could compromise where we're at. I do, and I'm afraid this does create a real precedence moving forward that, one, it isn't in the budget, and this is a large dollar figure that would be on our overall budget that we would be absorbing and accepting. Now, so I would be very careful with our decision to really authorize that, and you would need to amend the budget to come up with a line item because there's no line item in the budget that's currently assigned to this.
So when you say precedent setting, tell us what you mean by that.
So how long will this go on for, right?
You mean the disapproval of travel?
The
or not
paying for anything related to then absorbing any sort of cancellation.
Right, which we don't know would be the case. We don't know that. That's one scenario.
But I think if you choose to cancel it, then
Right.
what's our parents' recourse at that point as well, too?
Because we've taken action on a contract that we don't have, we're not a named party to.
Okay.
Well, that's not a decision that has to be made tonight.
If I heard correctly, it's the first meeting's in April, or the next travel's in April, the next board meeting's April 14th. It would be prior to that meeting. Unfortunately, we're getting it close to the wire, but maybe we'll get more direction in relationship to the CDC and potential other cases that are out there that maybe tumble us to a tier 3 or whatever codes are out there related to what structures we are. So I think time actually works to your advantage.
Isn't one of the trips, though, the first week of May, which is only, it was like 2 weeks
The
later?
vast majority of the trips will be completed that are currently waiting to take place.
Right.
Will all be concluded prior to the next board meeting.
Right. What I'm referring to by that statement, though, is what we are voting on. We are voting on
voting on
two.
tonight or after the next April 14th.
Correct,
board
and
meeting.
one is the first week of May.
Literally 2 days after the board meeting. And quite honestly, if the board were to delay action on that and provide me 48 hours
Right.
in which to notify families,
You can't do that.
Could you also maybe call a special meeting on April 4th and maybe add that to an agenda at a future date when the board might be getting together? Because you do have a date.
We could add that to our agenda for the Friday meeting.
there's no voting at the workshop.
But if you called a special meeting and so posted it at the
We-
beginning.
We have voted multiple
Sorry.
times at workshop meetings for items that had to be passed.
Yeah, but to Ms. Key's point, it would have to occur here. The point of the flexibility we provided to do the workshop at NSBA was that there would be no voting items. So anything's a possibility.
We haven't had that discussion yet either.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So, I am hearing one thing. I'm hearing that this board is concerned for our staff and students, and that we take these things very seriously, and it's more than just voting on 2 trips to Washington, D.C. That's why we're talking about this the way we are. So with that,
The motion that then is on the floor.
Correct.
Is to approve the travel. Motion was made by Mrs. Lamarca,
Thank you.
seconded by Mrs. Zettler.
correct,
Are you ready to vote?
yes.
All right, Lamarca,
Just kidding. I'm going to say yes.
is that an aye?
Yeah, sorry, aye.
Zettler?
I'm going to vote no.
Stevens, no. Ferrantino?
Aye.
So the motion fails based upon it being a tie, based upon Robert's rules.
Okay. Item 13 is board discussion, committee reports.
Any committee report?
Any committee reports?
I wasn't there.
No, we actually went through everything tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. that's
So
it.
I see our next meetings are April 14th, which will occur prior to that board meeting, which will be a very full and robust board meeting night. Any other discussion? 14th? Same day as the next board meeting, correct? Okay. We will not be going back to closed session. So I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Meeting adjourned.
Ay, ay, ay.
Oh, that sucked.